Hello and welcome to the video. Today's tutorial is about focus stacking and I will cover how to do it, whether it's necessary, the best software for post-production and which situations to avoid for focus stacking.
Put simply, when you delve into macro photography, one of the biggest challenges becomes capturing enough of your subject in focus. When you are too close to an object or you photograph a very small subject, you end up with just a slither of your scene in focus. One way to get around this is to take multiple images at different focus points and then merge them together in post to create more depth of field. In 2024, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, exploring various forms of macro photography. This included extreme macro photography, where the subjects were up to 5 times their life size on the camera's sensor. At this magnification, you are lucky if just one of your subject's eyes are in focus. I also invested in a 180mm macro lens, as I was enjoying the results that I was achieving using a Canon 100-400mm with close focus extension tubes. I just didn't enjoy using the setup, so I sought out a macro lens with a longer focal length. This again provided me with different results that I had become accustomed to, which I was typically shooting with a 100mm macro lens. In that video I captured some butterflies at my local nature reserve, but the best results I actually captured after I published that video. And the difference was focus stacking. Shooting wide open at f2.8 with a macro lens does create beautiful looking images, but under closer inspection doesn't actually have much in focus. Putting a single image captured next to a focus stacked image of the same scene, you can clearly see the difference. The single image has the eye in focus, however the antennas and the rear of the wings have all fallen out of focus. The 50+ images stacked show an incredible amount of detail and, more importantly, more of the subject in focus. Whichever method I use, I am always seeking out the cleanest possible backgrounds, and for that I want to use a relatively large aperture, since backgrounds become immediately busy looking as soon as you start to stop down the aperture. But obviously, shooting at large apertures renders less of your subject in focus. This is where focus stacking saves the day.
Taking a step back, if you are new to macro photography, then I would highly recommend that you watch my macro tutorial, where I cover all of the basics as well as some more advanced techniques. If you're up to speed with macro, then let's talk about the options that you've got for focus stacking.
Option 1 is to use a focus rail. This is a relatively cost-effective solution for taking multiple images of a subject at various focal points. This is your only real option if you're using manual focus lenses and you want consistent results. To use a focus rail, you simply mount the rail on a sturdy tripod, mount your camera on the focus rail, dial in your settings, focus on the closest point of your subject and slowly turn the handle on the focus rail. This will incrementally move your camera forwards fractions of a millimeter at a time, so you can capture every single slice of your subject in focus. The number of shots that you will require will depend upon the size of your subject, the magnification of your lens, the aperture settings and how far you're moving your camera forwards between shots. A complete 360 turn of the handle will move the setup by 1mm. In the example shown, I moved the camera forward 1/10 of a millimeter between shots. But the NISI focus rail that I'm using gives me the option of moving it 1/100th of a millimeter at a time. I bought this focus rail with my own money and I haven't tried any others, but it's well made and it has all the features that I need. To streamline this process, I used a remote trigger and switched off the automatic preview, as if you're taking 100 photographs with 3-second gaps in between, it gets really tedious. Option 1 will work with a camera flash, but you need to keep an eye on your flash output to make sure that your flash can keep up with the pace of your shooting. Alternatively, use a constant light source and then you won't run into that problem. The downside to option 1 is that your subject needs to be static for several minutes, so it's not suited to wildlife at all, or even shooting outside in the lightest of wind. You'll also need sturdy ground for your tripod setup, as well as consistent lighting for several minutes. I use a helping hand to clamp the flowers in place and used an artificial light for these consistent exposures. I've yet to use a motorised macro slider, which would certainly speed up this process. If anybody has, then please let me know your experience with this in the comments down below. Assuming that you want to photograph subjects that move, let's talk about the next option. Option 2 is in-camera focus stacking. Not all cameras will have this capability, but if you do have it, then definitely try it out to familiarise yourself with how this works on your particular camera. As per option 1, the best results will be achieved by mounting your camera on a tripod. Note that you will not get a raw output from any camera with this method, as focus stacking in camera is still a type of manipulation, therefore it's not a true raw file. Shoot raw anyway, but your camera will create a JPEG from the focus stacked scene, depending on your camera. The JPEG straight out of camera is very good on the Canon R8, however you will have less flexibility in terms of editing that image. For the best results you want to stack the raw files in specialist software, which I'll cover later in this video. The major downside to in-camera focus stacking is that it only works with autofocus lenses. There are obviously many macro lenses out there with autofocus, however the specialist lenses such as this Leica 2.5 to 5 times macro lens is manual focus only. As far as I'm aware, it's only the Canon RF 100mm macro lens that goes beyond 1:1 reproduction and has autofocus. But if you know otherwise, let me know in the comments down below. Therefore, if you're looking to capture extreme close-ups, assume that you'll be using a manual focus lens. Another downside to using in-camera focus stacking is that you won't be able to use on-camera flash. Therefore, your camera settings will need to take into consideration ambient light levels. Alternatively, use a constant light without scaring away your subject. Good luck. If your subject is moving because it's alive or simply because it's swaying in the breeze, you need to keep an eye on your shutter speed and capture the scene as quickly as possible.
Now the third and final option is to be doing in-camera focus stacking, focus bracketing, but handheld. Now that might sound lazy, but there are quite a few situations where you won't have the option to set up a tripod. I'm about to photograph some butterflies just before sunrise, and the chances are, if you put a tripod leg too close to your subject, it's going to scare them away. So there are instances where shooting handheld is not lazy, it's necessary. So this morning I've come out to my local nature reserve. I am looking for some butterflies this morning, and I'll be using the Canon 180mm macro lens. I've got that on an adapter, and I'm also shooting that on a Canon R8, which is really quite a diddy full frame camera. But the thing about this camera is it can do very fast frame rate, and it can also do in-camera focus bracketing, which is where in-camera it takes all the photographs for you, but it also gives you in-camera stacking. So it spits out JPEG to see whether or not you've been successful. And just for comparison, what I'll do is I'll see if I can do the same shot handheld and on a tripod, and we can compare the results. I don't know if you can see this on the DJI Pocket 3. I've got this tiny little, I think it's a Sussex Blue. You can see I've already taken 108 images this morning. I'm shooting at f3.5. I've done 3 in-camera focus stacks, handheld, and there is a subtle breeze as well. So you can see it's slightly waving around a little bit. The camera didn't give me any errors. It was able to just stack a moving subject handheld. So even though this camera and lens combination does not have any stabilisation, there's no IBIS on the sensor of the R8, and there's no optical stabilisation of the lens. And I was just able to shoot at a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second, and I've done a 30 photograph in-camera focus stack. Proven you can shoot in-camera focus stacking handheld. But for comparison, let's put this camera on a tripod. Hopefully I don't scare this butterfly away, and we can see what the difference is. If you have a look at the screen here, you can see it is just slightly blowing around in the wind. And this is where having a camera that takes fast photographs is going to come in handy. Press that once, here we go. It's now processing those images. So you can see here, that has created an incredible 40 photograph image stack. Look at that, amazing.
If you're curious why I would shoot a scene like this at f3.5, considering that seems a bit counterintuitive, then I'll show you exactly why. It's purely down to getting the cleanest possible backgrounds. And then when I switch to the same scene shot at f8, you'll immediately see how busy the background becomes. All of the flowers and the upright stalks in the background become a bit distracting. So that's exactly why I'd shoot the scene at f3.5.
And there you go, so we can put those two images side by side, handheld versus on a tripod. Which one gives you the best results?
Now the first image I'm going to show you is the handheld stack, and if I zoom into the image you'll see there's actually only one kind of small imperfection, and that is around the antenna. And this may not be to do with the photograph or the fact that it's handheld at all. The butterfly might just have moved its antenna in that 1 second. If I go to the second image, this is the one that was taken on the tripod, almost identical composition. And then again, if I zoom in close, have a look at the antenna, there's one of the antennas slightly hiding behind the other one, and it's got a tiny bit of movement on it. So I would say, looking at these two images side by side, it's very close call. It's not obvious which one was actually taken on a tripod. Out of these three options, I would choose option 1 for static subjects when I am shooting in a controlled environment. As much as I like the results that I get with the focus rail, they are cumbersome to use on location and I don't shoot static subjects too often. If your subject is somewhat patient, then definitely shoot from a tripod when doing focus stacking. Make your life easier and learn the behaviours of your subject, so that you can capture them when they are settled. For all other situations, I am shooting focus stacks handheld from now on. In terms of editing the RAWs, I process a variety of subjects using Lightroom and Photoshop. I started by doing some basic edits in Lightroom and I exported them all as layers into Photoshop. This brought them all across into one file. I then used Photoshop to align them, I then cropped the image, and then I used Photoshop to focus stack them. The results were okay, but not great. Photoshop, not being specialist focus stacking software, was not fantastic at dealing with the transitions between in-focus and out-of-focus areas. And overall it was a very slow process. In search of better results, I tested out Helicon Focus, which gave me a free trial for 1 month, allowing me to compare it against Photoshop. Helicon wins hands down. Although the user interface looks like software from about 20 years ago, it is very functional. It allows you to process RAWs or JPEGs, and the process is so much smoother than Photoshop. Helicon aligns the images and stacks the focused areas all in one hit and considerably faster. If you process JPEGs, it processed them in seconds. For RAWs, it took about 1 to 2 minutes on my Mac. Putting the two stacked images side by side for comparison, you can see that the Helicon Focus version handles the out of focus areas a lot better. Taking a close look at where the butterfly's legs meet the background, there is only one minor defect on the leg, which could be quickly fixed. If you compare that to the Photoshop stack, there are 4 defective legs, which is going to take a lot more fixing. Now take into account that both of these images had the exact same files imported for stacking, and this is why I think that Helicon is the clear winner. Now that I have settled on my software of choice, Helicon Focus, I've gone back through all of my old focus stacks, and here are my favourites from the last 12 months.
Now I'm going to continue to experiment with focus stacking this year, but I've definitely found what works for me, and I can see it in the results. If you shoot macro photography and often stack multiple images, let me know in the comments down below how you are achieving your best results. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you've got any questions, then let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.